What if the person who could end your life with a single touch wasn't a shadowy assassin in a trench coat, but the kindly, wrinkled man you passed every day without a second glance? The one brewing strange smelling tea in a shop that looked like a museum no one visited. What if true, absolute power wasn't in a gun or a knife, but in the precise placement of two fingers, tracing the ancient, invisible pathways of pain and paralysis hidden within your own body, pathways he knew like the lines on his own palm? It's a chilling thought, isn't it? That the most dangerous person in the room might be the one everyone assumes is the most harmless. Welcome back to Tales of Wonder, friends. If you're the kind of person who looks at a quiet face and wonders what history is etched behind the eyes, you're in the right place. If stories about hidden depths, secret skills, and poetic justice make your day better, then consider subscribing. It's your ticket to a weekly dose of the extraordinary hidden in the ordinary. Now, settle in. Let's begin today's story in full, immersive detail. The city of Veridia didn't have weather. It had moods, and today its mood was one of profound, weeping regret. The rain fell not as a shower, but as a slow, relentless exhalation of the damp sky, a gray veil that blurred the sharp edges of skyscrapers and turned the streets into shimmering, oil-slicked canals. It was a city of stark contrasts, of gleaming corporate citadels that pierced the clouds, and crumbling brick tenements that seemed to sag under the weight of their own history. In the canyon between these two worlds, on a street named Sycamore Lane that the city's ambitious had long ago written off, there was a sliver of space that time had politely forgotten. This was the home of the Golden Balance Acupuncture and Traditional Medicine Clinic. The window was filled with a curious still life. A porcelain statue of the sage Lao Tzu, a dusty abacus with amber beads, and a thriving, resilient spider plant that seemed to be the business's most vigorous occupant. The gold leaf lettering on the glass was flaking, whispering its name rather than announcing it. Inside was a world unto itself. Step over the threshold, and the metallic scent of the rain was instantly banished by a symphony of other smells. The earthy, root-cellar aroma of dried Rehmannia and astragalus, the high, clean note of peppermint oil, the sacred, smoky fragrance of sandalwood incense curling from a bronze burner shaped like a sleeping dragon. The air was warm, close, and still like the inside of an ancient, well-loved book. This was the domain of Dr. Liang Wei. To call him elderly was to miss the point. He was seasoned. He was perhaps 78, perhaps 82. His age was less a number and more a quality of presence, like the patina on old bronze. He was slender, but not frail. There was a tensile strength to him, the supple durability of bamboo that bends in a storm but does not break. His hair, a close-cropped cloud of silver, framed a face that was a map of a thoughtful life. His eyes, however, were ageless, dark, quick, and preternaturally observant. They missed nothing. And then there were his hands. They were his masterpiece, long-fingered, with prominent knuckles and nails kept impeccably short and clean. They moved with a mesmerizing, economical grace. Whether he was measuring herbs on a brass scale, placing hair-thin acupuncture needles, or simply pouring tea, each motion was intentional, fluid, and utterly without waste. His patients a small, devoted cadre, viewed him as a secular saint. To them, he was Dr. Wei, the man who had quieted Mrs. Gable's shrieking sciatica when a team of neurologists could only offer shrugs and pills. He was the one who had resolved young Tommy Fisher's chronic nightmares with a regimen of herbal tea and acupressure on a point called Shenmin, the spirit gate. He operated on a different axis from modern medicine, one of energy, balance, and deep systemic listening. He didn't just treat symptoms, he treated contexts. But to the bustling, indifferent city outside his door, he was part of the scenery. A relic, a quaint, failing small business owner in a neighborhood waiting for the bulldozers of progress. The young professionals who sometimes scurried past, huddled under their umbrellas, might feel a fleeting pang of nostalgia for a simpler time they'd never known, but they never stopped. They saw the old charts on his walls, detailed anatomical drawings from a 19th century Chinese medical text, covered in flowing calligraphy marking meridians like rivers of vitality and acupoints like celestial stars, and saw decoration, not knowledge. They mistook his profound silence for emptiness, his calm for passivity. It was a dangerous, almost laughable misreading. And then there was Leo Mancini. If Dr. Wei were a still pond, Leo was a volcanic eruption perpetually mid-blast. The lion, they called him, a nickname he'd given himself and enforced through sheer, noisy will. In his late 40s, Leo was a man built on a grand scale, with a barrel chest that strained against custom-made shirts and a voice that didn't speak so much as dominate airspace. He was a creature of acquisition, a property developer who saw the city not as a home, but as a monopoly board. His empire was one of glass, steel, and leverage. He possessed a certain brutal charisma, the kind that could charm a loan officer or intimidate a councilman with equal ease. He believed, with religious fervor, that every problem could be solved by the application of either money or force, and he was richly stocked with both. His latest vision was the apex, a 50-story statement of mirrored glass that was meant to be his legacy. The chosen plot was Sycamore Lane. One by one, the old businesses had succumbed to his combination of generous sounding, but ultimately paltry, buyouts and not-so-subtle encouragement. A faulty gas line here, a surprise city inspection there, a brick through a window late at night. The last holdout was the most stubborn, the most illogical, a tiny, stinking herbal clinic run by a man who looked like he'd blow over in a strong wind. Leo had sent his clean-cut, soulless lawyer, a man named Barrett, to handle it. Barrett had returned, uncharacteristically flustered, the envelope of cash still in his briefcase. He just looked at me and said no. He didn't even negotiate. He just went back to grinding leaves. This intrigued Leo, then irritated him, then infuriated him. The flooding of the clinic's back room was his next move. He'd expected tears, panic, a desperate phone call. Instead, his man reported the old doctor calmly sweeping water out the front door with a broom, his expression unreadable. The final insult was the silence. No angry call, no plea to the cops. Just nothing. Being ignored was a toxin Leo's ego couldn't purge. So, he decided on a personal visit. This wasn't business anymore. It was a lesson in respect. He would deliver it himself. The groan of the clinic's doorbell was a protest, a violation of the space's sanctity. Leo filled the doorway, blotting out the gray light, followed by his two shadows, Marco and Vince. Marco was all bullish muscle, a man who thought with his shoulders. Vince was leaner, quieter, with watchful eyes that missed little. They brought the outside in with them, a chill dampness, the scent of wet wool, and assertive aftershave. Wei was at his back counter, his spine to the door, focused on the rhythmic, circular grinding of dried chrysanthemum flowers in a heavy granite mortar. The sound, crunch scrape, was hypnotic and steady, a heartbeat that didn't quicken at their entrance. Dr. Wei, I presume. Leo's voice was a cannon blast in the chapel quiet room. He picked up a delicate glass cupping vial, held it up to the light, and smirked. Charming place you got here. Real authentic. Smells like my grandmother's attic, if she was a witch. Vince allowed himself a thin smile. Marco just cracked his neck, a sound like popping twigs. The grinding stopped. In a sudden silence, the hiss of the rain outside seemed to grow louder. Dr. Wei turned slowly. He didn't look at Leo's face first. His gaze traveled down, noting the slight, protective hunch of the right shoulder, the faint discoloration under the eyes, the way Leo held his weight. A diagnostician's assessment. Can I help you with an ailment, Mr. Mancini? Dr. Wei's voice was dry, soft, yet carried perfectly. It was a voice that didn't need a rise. Leo barked a laugh, but it was tinged with surprise. The old man knew his name. An ailment? Yeah, you could say that. I got a pain in my portfolio. This building. He gestured around as if swatting a fly. It's a cancer on my plans, and I'm here to cut it out. He strode forward and slapped the thick envelope onto the red lacquer treatment table. The sharp sound was obscene in the tranquil space. This is my final offer. It's more than fair. Take it, retire. Go sip green tea on a mountain somewhere. Paint pictures of birds. Dr. Wei's eyes drifted to the envelope, then back to Leo. There was no anger in them, no fear. There was something else, a profound, weary pity, as if Leo were a toddler throwing a tantrum. This clinic is not for sale. It is my life. It is a promise I made a long time ago. Please take your money and leave. Marco took a heavy step forward, his shoes scuffing the polished wood floor. The old man didn't hear you right, boss. Maybe he needs a hearing aid, or maybe we need to speak louder. He flexed his hands, making them into monstrous, meaty tools. A subtle transformation came over Dr. Wei. It wasn't a shift into aggression, but into a deeper, more potent form of his normal calm. It was the difference between still water and ice. His shoulders settled. His breathing, always quiet, became virtually undetectable. His hands, which had been resting on the counter, now hung loosely at his sides, the fingers slightly curled. He looked at Marco, and for the first time, his gaze held a sharp, clinical focus. I hear perfectly, Dr. Wei said, his tone now that of a lecturer addressing a slow student. And I see the chronic, knotting tension in your neck and upper trapezius. You carry your stress here like a yoke. It gives you blinding tension headaches, does it not? Particularly on the right side. He shifted his gaze to Leo. And you, Mr. Mancini, your complexion is slightly sallow. There is a faint, bitter odor on your breath despite your mint gum. Your liver qi is severely stagnant. A classic manifestation of unchecked anger, frustration, and an imbalance of rich foods and poor choices. It is why you wake at 2 a.m. every night, without fail, your mind racing, your body drenched in a sour sweat. Leo's smug mask shattered. The 2 a.m. wakings were his secret torment. He'd told no one, not his doctor, not his girlfriend. It was a private hell of anxiety and self-doubt that he drowned in ambition by day. How could this old man know? A superstitious chill traced his spine, but he batted it away with fury. Enough with the carnival fortune teller act. This isn't a negotiation. You have until Friday, or my friends and I will have to help you with your relocation. He turned to leave, the confrontation suddenly feeling off script, veering into the uncanny. Mr. Mancini, the two words spoken softly hooked him like a fish. He turned back. Since you are here, and you speak of ailments, Dr. Wei continued, moving out from behind the counter with that unsettling, gliding walk. You carry an old injury in that right shoulder. A tear poorly healed. From your youth, perhaps. Boxing? It flares when you're stressed, a dull, hot ache that makes it hard to reach for your wallet or to shake hands with confidence. A weakness you hide. Leo was paralyzed, not by touch, but by revelation. This was impossible. Let me show you, Dr. Wei said, his voice dropping into a soothing, almost hypnotic register. A small demonstration of the principles you mock. A simple pressure point. Jianjing, the shoulder well. It can release incredible tension. Unlock that frozen shoulder of yours. He moved toward Leo, his right hand lifting, those two fingers, index and middle, coming together, aligning with the surgeon's precision. Instinctively, Marco moved. I said, "You don't touch him." He stepped squarely between Dr. Wei and Leo, his chest puffed out, a wall of flesh and menace. Dr. Wei didn't break stride. His eyes flickered to Marco's face, then down to the junction of his neck and shoulder. There was no anger in his expression, only a kind of detached, academic interest. Then you're the perfect subject. The knot is palpable from here. It is a cyst of solidified anger. Allow me to demonstrate release. Before Marco could process the sentence, before his brain could command his body to shove the old man away, Dr. Wei acted. His left hand came up and rested lightly, almost kindly, on Marco's left deltoid. It was a calming, grounding touch, but his right hand became a different instrument entirely. The two fingers stiffened, not into a rigid spike, but into a precise, focused probe. An emotion too fast to follow. A flicker of wrist, a subtle rotation from the core. He drove his fingers into a specific spot on the crest of Marco's shoulder, an inch or two from the base of his neck. The effect was instantaneous and terrifying in its silence. There was no cry of pain. No dramatic kung fu movie sound effect. Marco's face simply emptied. All the aggressive bluster drained away, replaced by a blank, profound confusion. His eyes, wide and uncomprehending, locked onto Dr. Wei's. A wet, guttural escaped his slack lips. His right arm jerked spastically, then hung limp, as if the wires connecting it to his brain had been severed. His right leg buckled, but he didn't fall. He listed grotesquely to the left, held up only by Vince's sudden, panicked grip under his arm. Marco was a statue of living flesh, a man turned into a pillar of bewildered, rigid agony. He tried to form a word, but his tongue was a dead weight. Only a thin, desperate wheeze came out, the sound of a broken bellows. The clinic was tomb silent. The only movements were the slow curl of incense, smoke, and a frantic pulse visible in Marco's temple. The only sounds were the rain's whisper and Marco's ragged, choked attempts to breathe. Dr. Wei looked past the frozen man, his gaze meeting Leo's. His expression was peaceful, as if he had just corrected a misaligned bookshelf. As I said, Jianjing, it can release tension, or, if applied with the correct angle, depth, and intent, it can temporarily interrupt the flow of neural commands. A short circuit in the system. He will recover sensation and movement in 10, perhaps 15 minutes. He may feel a lingering pins and needles sensation in his fingers for a day. A small reminder of the body's interconnectedness. Leo stared. His mind, usually a roaring engine of schemes and dominance, was a white, silent static. This wasn't fighting. This wasn't violence as he understood it. This was something else, an act of pure, effortless authority over the very machinery of life. It was the most terrifying thing he had ever witnessed because it was so quiet, so clean, so utterly still. Now, Dr. Wei said, his voice now a whisper that seemed to drain the warmth from the room. Take your money, take your man, and get out of my clinic. No further command was needed. Leo, his face ashen, fumbled for the envelope. Vince, with a strength born of pure adrenaline, hauled the rigid, stumbling Marco towards the door. They spilled out into the rain, a tangle of shock and fear, leaving the sanctuary of the golden balance behind. The door groaned shut, cutting off the world of scent and stillness. But it could not cut off the terror now rooted deep in Leo Mancini's soul. Back in the sterile, angry comfort of his downtown office, with its floor-to-ceiling views of the city he thought he owned, Leo Mancini fell apart. He poured 3 fingers of expensive scotch and downed it, but it didn't burn away the cold knot in his gut. He kept seeing it, Marco's face blank as a wiped slate, the casual, almost gentle touch, the terrifying total result. Fear, for Leo, was a foreign country, and he was a lost tourist without a phrasebook. His native response was rage, and soon, the fear curdled into a boiling, homicidal fury. This old man had humiliated him, had shown him a power he couldn't comprehend, and therefore couldn't control. And things Leo couldn't control had to be eliminated. But he was shrewd enough to know this wasn't a job for a couple of leg breakers. Marco was still at a physiotherapist, complaining of a weird nerve pinch. This required a professional, a ghost. He reached out through layers of middlemen to a figure known only as the curator, a man who, for a premium, could arrange for problems to become tragic accidents. Over a secure, encrypted line, Leo laid out the situation, keeping his voice steady. It's a small herbal clinic on Sycamore. The Golden Balance. The guy's a hermit, an old Chinese doctor. He's stubborn. I need him gone. Permanently. Make it look like a botched robbery, something sad but mundane. He's a nobody. There was a long pause on the other end. So long, Leo thought the connection had dropped. Then the curator's voice came through, filtered and calm, but with a new, careful edge. Did you say the Golden Balance? On Sycamore? Old Chinese practitioner. Thin, very quiet, moves like he's gliding. Yeah, Leo said, impatience rising. That's him. What's the quote? Mr. Mancini, there is no quote. I am terminating this conversation and advising you, as a one-time courtesy, to walk away. Forget the building. Forget you ever met this man. What? Why? Who the hell is he? Leo's voice rose, the fear punching back through the anger. Another pause, heavier this time. Years ago, before your time, the city had a different ecosystem. There were syndicates that didn't deal in street corners, but in contracts, in influence, in silent removals. The most feared among them was the Jade Dragon Society, and their most effective instrument was not a gang, but a man. They called him Infu. Infu, the hidden dart. He was a myth, a ghost story enforcer told each other to scare the new boys. But he was real. He was their Zhixingzhe, their executive. His method wasn't messy. He would blend in, become a face in a crowd, a waiter at a party, a janitor in an office. He would brush past his target. A handshake, a pat on the shoulder, a pardon me in a hallway. Hours later, sometimes a full day later, the target would die. Corners would find nothing. Maybe a tiny, faint bruise, easily missed. Heart attack, stroke, sudden aneurysm. Perfectly plausible, untraceable. Leo's mouth was desert dry. He thought of the two fingers, the precise, surgical touch. He was a master of dim mac. The curator continued, the reverence clear even through the distortion. The delayed death touch. The pressure point arts, taken to their ultimate, lethal conclusion. He vanished decades ago. The story is he fell in love with a woman who knew nothing of his world. He wanted out. The Jade Dragons, terrified of him but respecting his service, agreed on one condition. He would never practice the dark side of his art again. He would disappear. The word was he went into medicine. To heal, not harm. To balance the scales, if you believe in such things. The pieces slammed together in Leo's mind with the force of a locomotive. The clinic, the calming presence, the hands, the instantaneous, paralyzing touch. This wasn't a quirky old doctor. This was a retired apex predator, living on a vow of nonviolence. A tiger who had taken up gardening. And he, Leo Mancini, had thrown a rock at it. You're telling me, Leo whispered, that I just threatened a living legend who can kill a man by shaking his hand? I'm telling you that you're still alive to have this conversation, which means Infu has chosen to keep his vow. For now, do not test him again, Mr. Mancini. He is not a man to be pushed. He is a force of nature that has chosen to be still. Walk away. The line went dead. Leo sat in his leather chair, the city's twinkling lights blurring before him. The pressure in his liver, the 2 a.m. sweats, they now felt like symptoms of a deeper, more mortal sickness. He had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had looked back with the calm, wise eyes of an old healer. The pressure point killer was real, and he was drinking tea 10 blocks away. The following week was a descent into a peculiar kind of hell for Leo. It was the hell of knowing. Every shadow held a new threat, but the greatest threat was the knowledge of his own monumental, staggering ignorance. He called off all operations on Sycamore Lane. He was jumpy, paranoid. The world had revealed itself to be a place where the rules he understood, money, force, noise, were meaningless in the face of a quieter, older, more profound power. His sleep evaporated. The 2 a.m. wake-ups were now full-blown panic attacks, his heart hammering against his ribs, as if trying to escape his foolish body. The ache in his shoulder became a constant, throbbing reminder of his vulnerability. He was a castle built on sand, and the tide had just revealed the true depth of the ocean. He knew he had to fix this. But how do you apologize to a god who has renounced his divinity? How do you bargain with a dragon who has voluntarily sheathed its claws? You cannot. You can only submit. You must approach on the dragon's terms. The idea came to him not as a strategy, but as a surrender. It was the only language left that might be understood. One afternoon, when the rain had finally ceased and a pale, apologetic sun was trying to break through, Leo returned to Sycamore Lane. He came alone. He wore simple clothes, no flashy watch. He carried nothing but his wallet and the crushing weight of his fear. The groan of the doorbell was now a sound that tightened his chest. Dr. Wei was at his desk, writing in a large, leather-bound ledger with a traditional brush. The movement was fluid, artistic. He did not look up. "Mr. Mancini, have you come for another demonstration?" The voice was the same, dry, soft, implacable. Leo's throat constricted. He forced the words out, each one an effort. "No, Dr. Wei. I've come as a patient." The brush paused. Dr. Wei set it carefully in its rest and looked up. His dark eyes took Leo in. The pallor, the tremor in the hands, the hunted look. He saw the truth of it. The terror, yes, but beneath it, the first crude, raw acknowledgement of a deeper reality. "I see," Dr. Wei said. He closed the ledger. "And what is the nature of your ailment?" Leo took a shuddering breath. He was laying his soul bare, and it was more terrifying than any boardroom showdown. "I have a pain. In my shoulder. The old one. It's worse now. And my liver chi. You were right. It feels blocked. Stagnant. Everything feels stuck." It was the most honest thing he had said in 20 years. Dr. Wei held his gaze for a long, silent moment. He was weighing, measuring not just the words, but the intent behind them. He saw the crude attempt at atonement, the survival instinct masquerading as humility. But he also saw an opening, a crack in the granite shell. And a healer's instinct is to treat what is presented. "Lie on the table," he instructed, his tone neutral, professional. With fingers that felt numb, Leo removed his jacket and climbed onto the firm, padded table. The red leather was cool against his back. He closed his eyes, every muscle tensed, expecting the paralyzing final touch. This was it. He was putting his life literally in the hands of the hidden dart. He felt Dr. Wei approach. He smelled the sandalwood and herbs on his clothes. Cool, dry fingers began to palpate his right shoulder, probing with an intelligence that seemed to see directly into the tissue. They found the precise epicenter of the old tear, the adhesion, the knot of scarred emotion and physical trauma. "Your fear is making the muscle rigid," Dr. Wei observed, his voice low and close. "It is guarding against a threat. You must breathe. Let it go. Here, in this room, I am only a doctor." And then the touch changed. The two fingers, the same instruments of such terrifying power, became tools of exquisite, deep repair. They pressed, not with a striking force, but with a penetrating, sustained, intelligent pressure. It was pain, but a transformative pain, a burning, releasing, unknotting agony that made Leo gasp. He felt layers of tension, years of aggression, anxiety, and buried stress begin to physically melt away under that precise, knowledgeable touch. Dr. Wei worked in silence, his focus absolute. He used his thumbs, his knuckles, the heel of his hand, mapping the geography of Leo's pain and systematically dismantling it. After perhaps 20 minutes, the shoulder felt loose, warm, alive in a way it hadn't since he was a young man. The constant background ache was simply gone. Dr. Wei then prepared a tea. Leo watched him select specific dried leaves and roots from different jars, weighing them on the small brass scale. He brewed it in a clay pot, the ritual itself a form of medicine. He poured a cup of liquid that was black as obsidian and handed it to Leo. "For your liver," he said, "to cool the fire, to move the stagnation. It will be bitter. The cure often is." Leo drank. It was appalling, a taste of earth and decay and profound bitterness. He drank it all, feeling it was a necessary poison, a symbolic cleansing. When he sat up, the world had a different texture. The light seemed clearer. The weight on his chest had lessened. He felt, for the first time in memory, genuinely calm. He stammered, "I will withdraw all offers for the buildings on this block. The Apex project is finished. You have my word. No more disturbances." Dr. Wei nodded slowly, as if the news was of no great consequence. He was putting his herbs away. "The body is a record keeper, Mr. Mancini. It holds the memories of every blow, every insult, every fear. You have been carrying a very heavy record for a very long time. The shoulder was just one chapter. The tea will help with the rest. But you must choose to put the book down." Leo left the clinic a different man. Not a saint, not even a good man, but a wiser one. A humbled one. He kept his word. The development permits were canceled. He even anonymously funded a neighborhood beautification grant for Sycamore Lane. The pressure was off, replaced by a wary, profound respect that bordered on reverence. He had been shown mercy by a force that had no reason to grant it, and the lesson was etched into his bones. And so, life on Sycamore Lane resumed its quiet rhythm. The golden balance remained, a tiny fortress of tradition in the marching army of progress. Dr. Wei continued his work, his hands bringing relief to aches and pains, his presence a calm constant in the chaotic stream of the city. But deep within the clinic, in the stillness of the night after the last patient had left and the incense had burned down to a soft pillar of ash, a private ritual would sometimes take place. Dr. Wei would lock the front door and draw the blinds. He would move to a section of the worn floorboards near his desk and, with a specific pressure from his toe, trigger a nearly invisible catch. A small, hinge compartment would open. From it, he would lift a simple, unvarnished wooden box, old and smooth from handling. The key to it hung on a cord around his neck, hidden under his shirt. He would place the box on his desk, unlock it, and open the lid. Inside, on a bed of faded crimson silk, lay two objects. One was a photograph, sepia-toned and fragile. It showed a young man in simple clothes, his eyes fierce and focused, standing beside a severe-looking older man with a long, wispy beard, his sifu, his master. The young man's hands were held in a specific, open-palmed posture, a fighting stance from a form long since abandoned. The second object was a meticulously preserved sheet of parchment. It was a diagram of the human body, front and back, but unlike the healing charts on the walls. This one was marked with a different set of points. 36 of them, circled in a faint, ominous red ink. Next to each was a tiny notation in classical Chinese: the angle of strike, the depth of penetration, the delayed effect, cardiac arrest in 12 hours, respiratory failure in 8, cerebral hemorrhage in 24. The forbidden points. The map of the touch of death. Dr. Wei would look at these artifacts not with pride, nor with longing, but with a deep, soul-aching sorrow. A remembrance of a path walked in darkness, so he could truly appreciate the light. He would trace a fingertip over the diagram, not to memorize it, but to recall the cost of such knowledge. The promise he had made to his dying wife, to never use it for harm again, was a chain that bound the tiger within, a chain he wore willingly. He would then close the box, lock it, and return it to its hiding place. The healer would stand, stretch his old bones, and brew a simple pot of jasmine tea. He would sit by the window, watching the occasional car splash through the puddled street, a silent guardian of a deadly secret. For the world still saw a harmless old man. They never guessed that the most dangerous killer in the city wasn't lurking in a gangland hideout, but right there, sipping tea behind a dusty window. A man who could, with 2 fingers, paralyze a body or stop a heart. A man who had chosen to heal instead. And that is the most shocking twist of all, isn't it? That true power isn't in the using, but in the restraint. That the most vulnerable spot on anybody isn't the temple or the heart, but the ignorance of the person looking at a pair of gentle, old hands and seeing only weakness, while the hands hold the memory of both life and death. Knowing what you know now, do you think Dr. Wei's final act of healing Leo was a genuine act of mercy, the ultimate flex of his power by showing he could give what he could also take away, or something else entirely? If this journey into the hidden world of a man balancing on the knife's edge between healer and assassin left you breathless, do the YouTube thing. Smash the like button. It tells the algorithm you crave more tales like this. Unleash your theories and answers to the closing question in the comments below. I read every single one. And of course, subscribe to Tales of Wonder and ring that bell. We peel back the layers of ordinary lives to find the extraordinary truth every single week. Until next time, remember, the quietest hands often hold the most startling histories. See you in the next video.